Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the madness. This is your Build Your Bracket, syracuse.com exclusive event for subscribers. We are going to help you win the office pool. This is the year. I can feel it just for you. My name is Brent Dax from syracuse.com. My colleagues Mike Waters and Donna DeToda are with us here, and we are so glad that you're here. We're so glad to be talking about the NCAA tournament because we didn't have one last year. It all shut down, as we remember, right when March Madness was about to start. So not only do we have March Madness, we have a March Madness this year, and Syracuse is in it. It was a little stressful coming down the stretch there, but they are in as a 11 seed in the Midwest region. They're going to take on the 6 seed San Diego State. So we are certainly going to get into that matchup. And we are going to get into all of the matchups here today. We are going to help you build that bracket here today. And thank you, by the way, for being here for this. Thank you for signing up for this. For the most part, we want to say thank you for being a subscriber to syracuse.com. Quite simply, we couldn't do what we do without you, our terrific subscribers, not only Mike, Donna, and I, and our sports staff, but really the entire website. And particularly in the last year, it has been extraordinary to see the directions we've had to go and the things we've had to cover. Who would have thought a year ago we'd be covering, a pandemic and life in a pandemic, hence why we're doing this event virtually right now and how life has changed in the last year. And our subscribers are the ones that have helped make us do that and has helped us to provide the coverage to you that you need and that you deserve to get through everything in the past year or so. So thank you for being subscribers to syracuse.com. And it also gets you cool access to stuff like this. So here's how today is going to work. What we're going to do is we're going to put up each region of the bracket up. We're going to go in a particular order, as you'll see as we go along here. Mike, Donna, and I will kind of give you our thoughts on the matchups and the games themselves. And we certainly want your questions as we go through this. So you'll see on your screen, there is a little kind of question mark icon. All you have to do is click on that icon and submit your question there in that chat feature. And what we'll do is right at the end here of each region that we go through, we will answer your questions here on this event. So as we're going through each region of the bracket, think of those questions that you have. I'm sure you got a lot of questions about Syracuse and San Diego State, but any of the games that we go through, any March Madness questions you have for this bracket, throw them there in that chat feature, and Mike, Donna, and I will answer them after we go through each region. Let me introduce the panel quickly. Of course, Mike Waters is with us, a award-winning beat reporter. And when I say award-winning, recently given the United States Basketball Writers Association Jim O'Connell Award for beat reporting. That's a very prestigious honor in the world of college basketball writing, and we're all thrilled for Mike there. Mike's been on the beat since Billy Owens was playing for Syracuse back in the late 1980s and has seen it all with Syracuse basketball through then. Donna DeToda is with us, also an award-winning journalist and my friend and colleague who we're thrilled to have with us here today. Donna has not only provided just amazing coverage of Syracuse basketball through the years. You name it, she has done it for syracuse.com and the Post-Standard and so many different events and things that she has covered. And we'll be there in Indianapolis at the historic Hinkle Fieldhouse, getting ready for Syracuse and San Diego State on Friday. So that's the panel, along with myself, Brent Dax from syracuse.com. And I think we're ready to go. Let's see the brackets, and we're going to start in the first four. And Mike, I'm going to turn to you first here in these first four matchups, which Syracuse avoided. I was stunned that Syracuse didn't get put into this field, right? And the one that's got to stand out to you, Mike, right? Michigan State, UCLA in the first four. I didn't expect to see that matchup here, but here it is.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brent. I was a little surprised to see Michigan State having to go into the play-in games, especially with some of the wins that they have this year, and they've been playing well down the stretch. The Spartans are a different team now that Aaron Henry really seems to be, their bell cow guy. And, Donna and I were at the first four a few years ago when Syracuse got assigned to play in Dayton, and UCLA actually was one of the teams there Donna's alma mater, St. Bonaventure, took care of UCLA. I got to admit right off the top, I'm not a huge fan of the Pac-12. Seeing UCLA and Arizona State lose those games in person, I'm going with Michigan State to get out of the first four and make some noise once they get in the field.
Donna, was there anything when you got a glance at the first four that stood out to you? Wichita State getting in there. I think a lot of Syracuse fans got nervous when they saw Wichita State get in there. Drake get in there, a team that was on the bubble with Syracuse. And remember, this is all in one day this year. This is not a two-day event because the entire tournament is in one place. So you're going to see all these games in one day later this week.
No, when I saw the Wichita State Drake matchup come up, I had a little pang of perhaps sadness for Syracuse because I thought that was a place that they might end up. I agree with Mike. Like, I don't really understand the Michigan State seeding. They tried to explain it last night. The chair, Mitch Barnhart, tried to explain it last night, and I think essentially what it came down to is they just lost a lot of games, and their predictive numbers were not all that great. But they can win games. And I think the way they're playing now at the end of the season, it might be predictive of what they can do once they get into the tournament. I think Drake is probably going to beat Wichita State. Wichita State did not play great in their American Athletic Conference Championship. They barely survived the first round, and then they got beat by Cincinnati. I don't know. Like I said, I just have barely looked at that first four because I really think Michigan State's the class of that whole conglomeration there.
So that's the first four. When you look at your bracket, you're going to see matchups with 1 seeds, and then there'll be 2 teams below that as a 16 seed, kind of a slash. That's from that region in the first four. So you kind of have to anticipate who you think are going to win those games as you're doing your brackets. And now we move on to the East region. And as you look up and down here, Michigan is the number 1 seed here in the East region. And Donna, I got to start with you here because look who I see as a number 9 seed right here, your St. Bonaventure Bonnies.
Yeah, I am not happy with the seeding, with the matchup that the Bonnies got, because I really would prefer they not get an athletic, a good athletic team at 8. I wish they, the good thing is, I don't think their size is going to be that detrimental. St. Bonaventure is not super big. They have a great big guy in Ashuni, who's a fantastic shot blocker. He can be a little foul prone, which is a little dicey in a situation like this, a one and done kind of tournament. I've watched almost every St. Bonaventure game this year. They are a really tough team. They've gotten a lot better as the years gone by in terms of shooting the ball. They started the season not being able to make a 3, and they've gotten a lot better in that situation. I think Ashuni is clearly the key in this game. He's a great shot blocker, like I said. He's gotten a little bit better on the offensive end, and St. Bonaventure just plays 4 guards and him, basically. And they have tough guys who really get after it on the offensive glass. Their biggest problem is their size. They're not super big. Go Bonnies.
Albeit for a Syracuse audience to look at Georgetown favorably, but what a run they made at the end as a 12 seed. And as we know in the tournament, there's always going to be a 12-5 upset. Do you think Georgetown's got a shot here against Colorado?
I think they do have a shot. Obviously, the run through the Big East tournament was pretty amazing, special for Patrick Ewing to win at the Garden. But I got to tell you, if you're looking for a 5-12 upset, I think a lot of people are going to fall in love with Georgetown after watching them on television and win those games and, the whole Patrick Ewing story. But I don't think this is the one to go with. Colorado, while Georgetown has won with defense lately, Colorado is top 20 in the nation in offensive efficiency. They got an outstanding point guard in McKinley Wright. Tad Boyle runs a really good program there. We don't get to see this a lot being back here. Their games are always on late. But, aside from the fact that, Colorado kind of, spilled the chili in an Office reference in the title game in the Pac-12 against Oregon State, I still think they're the kind of team that Georgetown didn't want to see if Georgetown was going to continue their run.
Florida State is here as a 4 seed, and they look to be lined up to win the ACC until right at the end there. Virginia snuck in after they struggled at the end of the season and won this thing. Michigan seems to be a pretty heavy favorite to come out of this bracket if you want to go chalk, but I'll offer up this both to Donna and Mike. And Donna, I'll start with you. Florida State making a run here. Do they have the goods, you think, to make a deep run in this tournament?
I do not think they have the goods to make a deep run, just because they have not been very good away from home. They've won all of their tough, beaten all their tough opponents on their home court, and they have struggled in neutral floor, and they have struggled on the road. I think Texas is going to come out of this bracket. I like Texas a lot. I think Michigan. I don't know what's up with Isaac Livers. I don't know if he's going to play. I don't know what kind of shape he's going to be in. And I love him. I think he's a do-it-all guy for Michigan. And without him, I think they're a little bit vulnerable in that region. And Texas they've got those two great big guys. They've got a great point guard. I really like their team. They're athletic. They get up and down. I like that team coming out of the bracket. And I actually think that Georgetown has a chance, unlike Mike, to advance. And I think they could beat Florida State. I'm not huge on the Seminoles right now, just because they can't win away from their home arena.
Mike, what do you think?
Donna's instincts are right on Florida State. It is weird that they have not been able to win at home. You look at their roster and who they put out there with MJ Walker, Raycon Gray. They've got tons of bigs, the freshman Scotty Barnes. These guys should be a team that ordinarily you pencil in for 2 or 3 wins in your bracket. But there is that little thing that kind of tells you, wait, what's wrong with this team away from home? I hate this region for one reason. They've got my favorite 2 seed and my favorite 3 seed in the same region. And you look at some of the other regions, like the region that Gonzaga's in. Gonzaga's 2, 3, and 4 seeds in Gonzaga's region are weak. And I think the committee just laid out a red carpet to get Gonzaga to the Final Four. This region, they did Michigan and the other high ones. No fair. Because I love Alabama and I love Texas, just like Donna. So I hate that Bama and Texas could end up facing each other so early in the tournament.
So Donna's got Texas coming out of this bracket as a 3 seed. I've got Michigan coming out of this bracket as a 1. I'm going to go chalk on this one. Mike, I'll toss it back to you quickly. Ultimately, who do you think's coming out of the East here?
We're not helping any of our readers here because I'm taking Alabama. I love what Nate Oates does. I love the system he runs. The Herbert Jones kid is fantastic. So yeah, I got the Crimson Tide in the Final Four.
I like Alabama a lot too. I just think Texas's size is a little too much in that region. But I love Nate Oates too. I love that he's a big analytics guy. He's a modern NCAA basketball coach, and I think he's done amazing things there in just a couple of seasons.
And he also told Will Wade off. We all saw it.
All right. Well, we don't want to say whether or not Will Wade deserves to be told off, and all of us are on the same page in that category.
So that's the East region. Let's move on to the South region here and take a look at these juicy matchups. Baylor is the 1 seed here. Ohio State is the 2. And there's our friends at Colgate in that 3-14 matchup. And boy, Donna, I'll say this. In that matchup between Arkansas and Colgate, whatever the over is, take the over. There's going to be a lot of points in that game.
Yeah, you know what? Colgate can really shoot the 3. I mean, they make a lot of shots. They take a lot of threes. They're a little pacier this year than they usually are. And Matt Langle plays like 10 guys. He legit plays 10 guys. There will be a lot of players coming in and out of the game for Colgate. It's obviously a tougher matchup for Colgate because Arkansas is so athletic. Colgate's going to really have to make shots in that game. The good thing for Colgate this season is they have so much depth, and they don't have to worry about foul trouble. They've got 2 good big guys who I think will help them. It's just Arkansas is so athletic. Like I said, Colgate's really going to have to shoot it in that game.
Mike, in this region, you can really see the disrespect that the committee put on the ACC all across the bracket, but particularly here. Virginia Tech is a 10, was interesting to me. North Carolina, there is an 8. That's a juicy matchup there, an 8-9 between North Carolina and Wisconsin. And we were talking before we started today about our preseason Final Four picks, and a couple of us had Villanova. But, Mike, Villanova seems to be one of, again, here we are in the 5-12 bracket looking for those upsets. A lot of people seem to love Winthrop to take out Nova.
Yeah, and I think that one of the obviously the big reason for people liking that upset is because Villanova is without Colin Gillespie. It's fantastic point guard. They obviously lost early in the Big East tournament. I don't think they've won since the kid went down with his injury. And Winthrop is like 23-1. They play fast. Everyone keep an eye on their coach. Pat Kelsey is going to be at a Power 5 school real soon. That said, man, Villanova still has guys. But if you are looking around for that 5-12 game, why not take a flyer on Winthrop? There's another one we'll get to eventually in the 5-12 one. But going back to the Colgate game, I was really hoping to see Colgate come in and do some damage, but I agree with Donna. Arkansas is the absolute worst team for Colgate because Arkansas loves to play at a fast pace just as much as the Raiders do. I think, it would have been great to see Colgate kind of push the pace against somebody and throw up threes. Arkansas doesn't care. I feel bad for Colgate. Maybe they pull off an upset, but I don't see it happening.
You just never know.
Yeah.
Right here at the top of the bracket in the South is Baylor. The last time Syracuse played in the NCAA tournament was against Baylor 2 years ago. They had 16 three-pointers against the Orange in that game. They played a little 2-3 zone, which is always something in Syracuse's back pocket, of course, and we'll get to the Orange coming up in the next region here. But, Mike, how has Baylor evolved from that team that was in an 8-9 game against Syracuse to being one of the favorites to win it all this year?
This year's Baylor team got off to a great start because of its defense. I mean, they shoot the three still really well. I think their three-point shooting percentage is like tops in the country. But they were playing great defense. Then they went on a COVID pause. And coming off the pause, it was kind of like Clemson, to put it in an ACC perspective that Syracuse fans might relate to. The defense just wasn't the same. But I think if they kind of get that back, and they've had some games to play, and, Baylor might be the one seed that a lot of folks out there when they're filling out their bracket maybe kind of forgot about because they didn't win their conference tournament. But listen, winning your conference tournament or losing it, don't get too hyped over who won their conference tournament. Syracuse fans can remember this. Syracuse fans won the Big East tournament in 2005. I don't have to remind them what happened after that. In 2006, Syracuse wins the Big East tournament. Same thing, first round loss. The 03 team that didn't even make the Big East final, Carmelo Anthony, the boys went all the way to New Orleans. So don't get hung up on the conference tournaments. Baylor's a dangerous team.
Don, is there anything else about this South region that jumps out to you? Utah State was that team that got in as an 11 seed and was making Syracuse fans nervous. We were watching the selection show yesterday here, but does this feel like chalk to you with Baylor, or can any of these lower seeds make a run and knock them out?
I think Ohio State has the potential to beat Baylor. Baylor has one of the best players in the tournament in Jared Butler. They're just when they're playing at their peak, they're really, really hard to beat. But like Mike said, they've really struggled defensively a little bit coming out of one of their last COVID pauses. They've got a bunch of guards. They're just a really nice team. They've got a glue guy. They've got all the ingredients that you need. I think Ohio State and potentially Purdue has a chance to come out. I think that if Purdue gets through, and I think they will, if they get through and they play Baylor, that might be an interesting game. Purdue's playing really well, and they're physical, and they may be able to slow Baylor down a little bit. I have Baylor advancing in that region, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't advance in that region. And I think Texas Tech is a little vulnerable at the 6-11 spot. And I think it's a pretty nice bracket a pretty nice first matchup for Virginia Tech, which is a really small team. They're playing against a really small team in Florida, so they didn't get a team with a bunch of giants, which Virginia Tech has a hard time with.
All right, that is the South region. We're going to move on to the one you've all been waiting for, the Midwest. Here's Syracuse as the 11 seed taking on the 6 seed San Diego State. Let's dive right into that matchup first, and we'll go through the rest of the bracket. Donna, you wrote about the San Diego State team last night, and boy, Syracuse is getting a really good 6 seed here, a team that's got a player of the year, a coach of the year. Yeah. They can shoot the three, they can score, and maybe a team that really hasn't gotten enough attention in the last couple of years based on what they've been able to accomplish.
Well, I've been a voter in the AP poll the last few years, and they've been in my polls the last two years. I mean, they have an insane record. They're something like 53-6 or something in the last 2 years. Like, I don't care who you play, 53-6 is really good. I think Syracuse can win that game, can win this game. I think they've played a lot better. I think the zone, as much as fans might hate the zone, in situations like this where they're going to play a team that relies a significant amount on their three-point shooting. San Diego State has one small guard who shoots the three really well. And I think the zone can be disruptive. All the players yesterday, all the Syracuse players were talking about, they thought one of the biggest improvements they've made recently was on their defense. And I think if Syracuse can lock down on them defensively, they could give them a game, and I think they could win that game. Interesting history between Syracuse and San Diego State. They once played in the NIT. You'll recall in 2007, record-setting crowd at the Dome. Everybody was all ticked off because Syracuse got snubbed that year out of the tournament. But Mike, the most interesting matchup between these two certainly took place on an aircraft carrier back in 2012, I believe that game was. You were there.
Donna and I both were there, and it was probably one of the most amazing experiences of both of our careers. Not only to cover a college basketball game played outdoors, but on a boat. It was bizarre. They had to delay the game a day or two because there was rain in the forecast. So obviously you can't play outside. There was concerns about condensation on the basketball court. No one could make any shot outside of like 8 or 10 feet because of the wind. Donna I think CJ Fair was the only guy that made a three that day. Yeah, I think you're right. And because CJ back then wasn't a really good shooter, and so the wind actually blew an errant shot in. That's the theory, right? San Diego State and Syracuse to meet again, but not on a boat. Right.
Mike, looking through the rest of the Midwest. By the way, folks, not that this has anything to do with why you should pick any teams in this region, but you never know. There are 6 teams in this region whose primary color is orange, but only one team that actually has the name actually in their nickname. So keep that in mind as you go through here if you base your picks on colors or mascots or something of that nature, right? Illinois is the top seed. And Mike, when I was watching last night, ESPN, CBS, a lot of the reactions, saw a ton of people putting Illinois in the national championship game out of this bracket.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that. First of all, Illinois is fantastic. They got Ayo Dosunmu is just a guard you can fall in love with. They got the big kid, the Kofi Cockburn, and just a whole bunch of other guys. But remember what I said about recency bias. Let's be careful before you just automatically throw Illinois all the way through. They are going to run into some challenges here. I don't know how soon it comes, but if Oklahoma State is the team that Illinois ends up having to play in the Sweet 16, I love Oklahoma State. I love the way they play. They got one of the best players in the country and a freshman, Cade Cunningham. I think that'll be a tough matchup for Illinois. Oklahoma State will fight you. They don't go away. They've been hardened by the Big 12. I mean, anybody that can go into Morgantown and beat West Virginia, and they did it without their best player. Cunningham didn't even play that day. So that's a really good Oklahoma State team. And I'm also distracted because I keep going back to the bracket, looking at all the teams that wear orange now that you mentioned it. And
there's 6 of them.
It's really kind of freaky.
Donna, when you look at this bracket, besides all the orange teams that we mentioned here, what else sticks out to you here? And Syracuse's path, if they can get by San Diego State, Mike brought up that great West Virginia team. They would most likely be next, provided Morehead State doesn't pull off a huge upset in that matchup. What else grabs you here in the Midwest?
Well, I too am a huge Oklahoma State fan. I love Ice Likely. He's back from his injury. He's a tough little combo guard that will play alongside Cade Cunningham. They've got the 2 Boone brothers who play on that team. I love Mike Boynton as a coach. He's super emotional. He's a guy from Brooklyn who's a young coach who, I think has done an amazing job with that program. And I think they can beat Illinois. That said, I also love Illinois in this bracket just because of Ayo. But here's one thing to think about with Illinois. They are a terrible free throw shooting team. And Kofi is an extraordinarily bad free throw shooter. He makes like half of his free throws. And what happened in that Big Ten title game is what's going to happen and could happen in the NCAA tournament is teams are just going to hack him when he gets around the basket if it's a close game. So that's one thing to think about with Illinois. They struggle to make free throws. And in the NCAA tournament, you got to make free throws, as you know, Brent.
Free throws matter.
Does anybody else like Houston as much as me? Or is that just from watching too much TV?
No, I like Houston. I think they've been a really tough and really solid the whole season. They I've actually watched them a couple of times, and they're pretty good. I actually think Rutgers could win that game if Rutgers. I think Rutgers is going to be Clemson, and I think Rutgers could get through, and I think they could beat Houston. Just because Rutgers is so battle tested, and they've got Ron Harper who is a Howard Cole guard. If he gets hot, I think they'll be a tough out. I guess what I'm saying, Mike, is no. I don't love them, but I've liked them a lot all season. I've ranked them really high in the AP, so we'll see what happens with them.
Well, and that brings to mind when you brought up Rutgers, how much experience matters in an event like this. And nobody played in it last year, of course, so that kind of cancels out some experience factors. But there are teams that have players that played in 2019. Rutgers hasn't made the tournament since, 1991, I believe, and you're seeing some first-timers and some programs that have just kind of come along the past couple of years that are now finding themselves not only in the tournament, but as high favorites in the tournament. And as we're going through the brackets here, one thing to keep in mind is everything is in Indianapolis or surrounding areas. You don't have any regional opportunities here, any favorites. Mike brought up that 2005 Syracuse team that goes to Worcester, Mass. and ran into a hornet's nest of Vermont fans. And none of that exists this year. Everything is in neutral territory. There will be a limited amount of fans allowed to go to games. I think teams are being given like 2,500 tickets, something along those lines, to distribute. But you really have to look at the matchups themselves more than ever, because regions, travel, none of that is a factor this year because it's all in one place. So we move now to the West region in the NCAA tournament. And again, just a reminder for all our friends watching, if you have any questions for us, please submit them in the chat feature. It's that little question mark you see on your screen. Send us your questions, and then we're going to go over them shortly here after we go through the West region. Our friend Hank Doman will feed us those questions from our great subscribers out there. So if you have any more questions that you think of as we're going along here, feel free, put them in the chat feature there, and we'll answer them coming up here shortly. Here it is. Gonzaga. I can't remember a more heavy favorite to win it all from start to finish than Gonzaga. They have an opportunity to become the first undefeated team to win a national championship since 1976, which coincidentally was the last time that Duke and Kentucky were not in the field. Indiana, Bob Knight finished that season undefeated. Don, I'll start with you. What is it about this Zags team that makes them kind of stand out above everybody else?
They have good players. They have a really good freshman point guard in Jalen Suggs. They have a good big guy in Timmy. They have a good wing guy in Corey Kispert. They have all the ingredients, and they've got some experience. And they haven't lost a game, so you can imagine the confidence that is built for them over the season. A detractor might say, well, who have they played? Have they played the kind of schedule Baylor has played? Have they played the kind of schedule Michigan has played? Have they played the kind of schedule Illinois has played? And I will say no, that they have not played that kind of schedule. But it doesn't mean that they're not good. I picked them to win the national championship just because I've sort of been I don't want to say a down on Gonzaga over the years, but I've seen them. I don't know how tough they are. And I think this year that they're battle tested, they're tough, they've got older guys, and I think it's going to be really hard to beat them. I think Iowa has a decent chance to beat them because, they have Luka Garza and they've got some shooting. But I don't know that they can guard Gonzaga. So chalk for me in that region. Although I know what Mike's upset pick is going to be.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it here in a second, but I guess we should call this the COVID bracket in a way, right? Because you have Kansas in this bracket, which has run into COVID trouble as of late. We know with Virginia, the day after they beat Syracuse in the ACC tournament, they get some positive tests, yet they're here in the bracket, Mike. So the committee took a chance that both of these teams are going to be able to field teams later this week. And Mike likes to make fun of me of this. that's why I wait to the last minute to put my bracket in. Like, who knows what's going to go on with these teams? So I'm going to wait it out before I officially submit my bracket, just because who knows what the situation's going to be. Virginia might not even be able to fly to Indianapolis until like Friday, right? Like minutes or days before the game even starts.
Yeah, I teased Brent about not having a bracket ready for this exercise here today. But I tell you what, if you are out there and you're thinking of filling out a bracket, hold on to it until the very last minute for the reason Brent said. You don't know who's going to have to pull out of this event, or even if a team doesn't have to pull out, if somebody loses a player of note. And again, going back to what I said earlier in the session here, Gonzaga got the easiest region. The 2 3s and 4s are the easiest 2 3s and 4s in the whole tournament. I'm not a big fan of Iowa. I don't think they play defense as well as most 2 seeds. They play defense better than past Iowa teams. That's the best I can say about Iowa. And then they get the 2 teams as 3 and 4s in this region that have the COVID issues. You know, what the committee was doing, putting both the COVID teams in the same region, again, it just looked like they were serving this up on a silver platter for Gonzaga. But Donna mentioned upsets, and this is the region that I went upset big. I love UC Santa Barbara over Creighton. Creighton looked horrible in the Big East tournament. I gotta wonder, did Greg McDermott really get that locker room back after the controversy that they had a week ago? You gotta wonder. And if you're looking at that whole when's Virginia going to get out there and who can play and stuff, gotta tell you guys, the Ohio Bobcats are a really good team coming out of the Mid-America Conference. Jeff Bowles has done a great job with that program. I don't know if I'm quite ready to pull the trigger on it, but we shall see.
Do it.
And the team I love is Southern California.
So here in the West, we think Gonzaga is the favorite. There's some upsets there. I should have asked this in some of the other regions, but I look at Oregon. I think they're kind of misseeded at 7. I think USC could be a higher seed than 6, and you don't want to get in the weeds too much there about where teams where you think they should be. But I look at this region, I feel like that's why, some upsets, and I put that in quotes in some ways, could happen, because I think the committee kind of misfired on a couple of seeds in here. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I think Oregon is definitely underseeded. USC plays in the Pac-12, and I don't think the Pac-12 got a whole lot of respect this year. They've got a great big guy, one of the best big guys in the country, in Evan Mobley. I think they're pretty good. And I think Oregon has a great guard in Chris Duarte. I think Oregon's problem is that they've had a lot of COVID issues. And so I think the committee maybe just didn't really quite know like how good they were or what their situation was. But I think they're good. I've had them in my top 25 this year, even COVID issues or not. And I think they are underseeded. So you're telling me that Oregon is, I don't even know what they ended up on the seed list, but somewhere in around 28, 26 or 28, which I think they're better than that.
So that's the West. We kind of refer to it as we were going through each region, but now as we look at what the Final Four could look like in Indianapolis, remember the whole tournament is in Indianapolis, and it's pretty much it's almost like Survivor. You arrive in Indianapolis, and if you keep winning, you just kind of have to hunker down and stay there, and teams get eliminated as you go. It's going to be fascinating to see how this whole thing works, but they're going to be in one place trying to make it here to the Final Four. So, Mike, I'll start with you. Let's just kind of go through, and you brought it up. We're not going to hand in our brackets officially till later this week, but knowing what we know now, what are you feeling for a Final Four?
Well, Gonzaga, obviously. Out of the East, I guess I keep going back to Alabama, and I think maybe I'm violating one of my own tenets, which is to avoid recency bias. But the way they played in the SEC tournament just convinced me that they're a team that could do some damage. So I did go with Bama down there. I went with Baylor, and I know it's starting to sound like a lot of chalk, but after agonizing over Illinois, Oklahoma State, and then I agonized again with Illinois, Houston, I kept picking Illinois. I don't know about that one as much though, but you know, those were my 4 with a few agonizing ones, especially the Oklahoma State one. But I'm interested to see what Donna's got.
I have the Zags. I have Texas moving out of that bracket, but I also like Bama. I don't think Michigan's going to get through as the 1 seed, and that's the only non-chalk team that I don't feel great about in the bracket. I have Baylor moving through. I think Baylor and Illinois are also both kind of vulnerable. Illinois because of the free throw situation, and Baylor just because they haven't guarded as well as they could guard. I too love Oklahoma State. I've loved them all year, and I think it would be such a cool story if they got through. Cade Cunningham is a guy you should watch, whether or not you are interested in Oklahoma State or not. He's a phenomenal college player. He makes amazing. He can shoot the ball. He makes amazing passes. He's a 6'8" point guard. He's super fun to watch. I have Baylor and Illinois at my Final Four that I did in like 10 minutes, 10 minutes. But the more I think about it, the more I think Oklahoma State can get through in that region. And I think Baylor probably will survive in the South. But, Ohio State's also a really good, chalky team to pick there. So nothing dramatic, I guess.
And I guess I should ask the question this way when it comes to the national champion. Is anybody not picking Gonzaga to win the whole thing?
That'd be a no.
I got them. Mike, you got the Zags, right?
Yeah, I got the Zags. And one reason, to put a little strategy in who you pick, one reason I take the Zags to win it all is I'm the most confident in them getting to the Final Four.
Yeah, you're right.
So, pick a team to win it all that you're pretty sure is going to still be alive.
That is great strategy because I think we get hung up a little bit too much in trying to find that upset. And you do got to pick a couple. They're going to happen. Statistically, the best place to pick an upset is either in the 5-12 game or the 6-11 games, right? Occasionally a 14 or a 13 wins. We hope our friends at Colgate as a 14 seed pull off the upset. But that's the better strategy through the years to win these things. And I know this year is kind of thrown off because everybody's in the same place and some of those advantages get taken away, but it's going to be pretty chalky. Now, there's always one fluke team that seems to get its way through to the Final Four, so you might lose that region, but for the most part, if you believe in the good teams, ride them as far as you think they can go, particularly Gonzaga. Now, I'll be fascinated, guys, if Gonzaga loses. How many brackets will be destroyed around the country? I feel almost as if there's too many people riding the Gonzaga bandwagon at this point, but they're just too good to pick against it. At the very least, making it far. They might not win the championship. There's 2 or 3 teams that legitimately could do it, but boy, chaos that will ensue if Gonzaga loses. It's going to be something to watch. So those are all of the regions and our Final Four and championship picks. Now it's time for your questions. If you haven't submitted a question yet, please do. There is a chat feature. You'll see it's that little question mark on your screen where you can pop questions into the chat feature. So send us your questions here. Anything you want to know about Syracuse, about the bracket, about the tournament. I would love to help you out here. Hank, our friend Hank Doman, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir, to fire some questions our way from our great subscribers here today.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot there, Brent. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, too. We really appreciate you jumping on with us, and we appreciate you subscribing. What you really help us provide what I think is the best coverage around for Syracuse basketball and some of the best coverage across the country. So thank you. Brent, at this point, I don't have many questions. Actually, one just came in. How about that? So we'll start with that one. Guys, if not the Zags, then who? You have to pick someone else to win the tournament, and you can't pick Gonzaga. Who's it going to be?
Wow. I'm going to pick Oklahoma State as my other team that could possibly win, just because it's a fun pick. They're a 4 seed, I think, 4 or 5 seed. They're a 4 seed. And why not? It's been a crazy year. There's been a lot of crazy upsets. There's been a lot of crazy stuff that happens every week in college basketball. Why not just go on a limb and pick a random team? So there you go. There's my forceful Oklahoma State as the random team that could win.
For me, it would be, since this is the year that everybody has had to wear a mask, I'll go with the team that's led by the masked man, Illinois and AO.
The mask is cool. I gotta say, like, he looks cool in that mask.
He
If
absolutely
he's not
does.
marketing that when he hits the NBA,
Right?
he ought to just keep on wearing it, even when the nose heals.
Well, I'm going to throw a third team in there just to make it juicier for our friends watching today. I'll go Baylor. I just think they've been right there 1-2 with Gonzaga this year. And, well, it's been a weird year. There's just been, Donna, you know, as an AP voter, there's just been 3 or 4 teams that the cream kind of rises above the top. And I think you're going to see that happen in a tournament setting where travel's not a factor. So I'll put Baylor on that list as the next team that can win.
The thing about Baylor is that they're a really mature team. They've got a lot of guys who have been around a while. They're an older team. They've got great guard play. They played 3 guards. You know, they're small-ish, but you know, they're a team I picked preseason to win the national championship just because I love all their guards, and that's not a bad, certainly not a bad pick as your alternative pick.
Okay, Hank, what else you got for us?
All right, up next, who on the Syracuse basketball team, who will carry the team in the tournament?
Boy, it's hard not to say Buddy Boeheim at this point, right? Given how he's played down the stretch. 3-point shooting, guard play is important in the NCAA tournament. But Mike and Donna, I keep going back to Alan Griffin. And I know he's struggled in the past couple of games here. He's got to get back on track for this team. I feel like he's somebody that can just carry a team through complementing what Buddy is doing or complementing what somebody else on this team is doing scoring-wise. I'm going to put Alan Griffin at the top of that list, almost with Buddy as an obvious choice at this point, the way he's playing. Who do you think? Donna, let's start with you.
I think Buddy's the obvious choice, too. I think he's number 1. I think 1B is Quincy. They need to get some rebounding. They need to get some defense from the forward spots. And I think he can score the ball, too. I mean, I think he's a vitally important guy on the team. And I think he's my 1B in the who is the most important or who will carry the team. I think he can do a lot of things. He's hugely important around the basket. And I think if he plays well, I think that's a good sign for Syracuse.
Yeah. I totally agree with Donna. And just to put a little bit more emphasis on Buddy, especially in the first round matchup with San Diego State. San Diego State's starting guards are 5'8" and 6'3", and Buddy's 6'6", and he has learned how to use his size by dribbling into the lane and getting that jumper off over smaller guys. So I think in that first round matchup, Buddy might have the one advantage over his defender. And we'll have to see if San Diego State adjusts. They do have some wings. They're a little bit bigger than that. They're both like 6'6". But yeah, I'm going to go with Buddy. But Donna's right about Quincy too. They need him to play well.
They really do. And per Donna's point about Quincy, Syracuse is undefeated this year when they out-rebound their opponent. 14-0 this year when they do that. So will they get an advantage there? Defense is important. That's why I go back to Alan Griffin a little bit. I think he's got to step up in the zone. And, man, he's taken on a lot more responsibility this year. You also have to wonder what Alan Griffin's thinking with Illinois being a favorite to win the championship, and here he is at Syracuse. But we'll see how that turns out. Hank, what do you got for us next?
So, guys, this is one of my favorite questions, and I'm going to even take it a little bit further. The subscriber wants to know who your sleeper is, but I want you to look down at your Sweet 16 picks and tell me your lowest ranked, your lowest seeded team that you have reaching the Sweet 16. So give us a sleeper, and since we force you to make up your brackets on Monday morning, tell us who your lowest seeded team is in the Sweet 16.
Okay, my lowest seeded team in the Sweet 16 is Utah State. Just because I'm not a big believer in Texas Tech at this point. They've struggled a little bit down the stretch. They haven't been all that consistent all season. And Arkansas can be, I think they're a top 10 team right now, but I think they can be a little mercurial as well. So I would say Utah State is an 11, maybe getting to the Sweet 16. That's the lowest seed I have. I'm not super confident about it, but I like to pick a team every year that I think, team or two, and that's my pick. I have Santa Barbara too. Sorry, I have Santa Barbara moving out to are they a higher seed? They're a 12 seed. So yeah, I have Santa Barbara advancing to the Sweet 16 as well. And Georgetown. I have 3 teams. I take it back. I don't know my own bracket. I have 3 teams advancing. The 3 low-seeded teams advancing to the Sweet
Mike,
16.
anybody lower than a 12 or higher than a 12, I guess you would put it, advancing through?
I actually have Santa Barbara in my Sweet 16 too, and that's after pulling off the first round upset of Creighton. And then I actually have them beating Ohio. I have Ohio pulling the upset of Virginia just because I'm not certain where Virginia is going to be. But I didn't want to get too crazy there. So, I went with the Gauchos in the Sweet 16. And again, I'll go back to Southern Cal as another legit sleeper that can win 2 or 3 games for you. I do like the Trojans. I might be having a little partiality there. But Jason Hart was one of my favorite Syracuse players of all time, and he's an assistant at Southern Cal. But really, it's more about Evan Mobley than it is Jason Hart.
Well, I've got somebody advancing to the Sweet 16 that is higher than both the teams that Donna and Mike brought up. Colgate! Let's go, Raiders! The 14 seed.
Wow.
Baby. That's
wow.
That's the big upset. Colgate's getting through. They're an experienced team. They can shoot the lights out. They can score. I think they got that nothing to lose attitude. Ride the Raiders, baby. Ride the Raiders.
They are really deep, and they have a ton of guys. He plays a ton of guys, and the only concern I have with Colgate is they have hardly played any games. I mean, they've barely played games this year. They've been they haven't had a single case of COVID, from what I understand. Although that perhaps is not true, but they haven't had a single case of COVID, and they've been sort of snake bit by a couple of games where teams have been either in their town or in their building and have had a positive COVID test and have had to call off 2 straight games. So I just wish that they had played some more games. It's hard to say too much about a team that's played as few games as they've played.
Yeah. Adding to what Donna said, I would feel better about Colgate if they had played non-conference games against teams that look a little bit more like what they're going to see when they face Arkansas. I mean, playing Loyola Maryland for your conference title. I mean, listen, all due respect to Loyola of Maryland and the rest of the Patriot League, but Arkansas is a completely different animal here. I mean, and in other years, Colgate would play Kansas. They'd play Syracuse. They would play another Power 5 team. I think it really would have helped Colgate coming into the tournament if they had that kind of experience.
I think they're going to slow the pace for this game too. I mean, I would be surprised if they tried to run with Arkansas. I would imagine they're going to slow it down. They're going to try to run. Matt runs a lot of nice offense, run some sets, get some guys open for 3-point shots, and they're not going to want to get out in a track meet with Arkansas.
Yeah, I think they're saving all their best stuff for Arkansas. Let's go Raiders, baby. Jordan Burns and Colgate going to carry through. All right, Hank, what else you got for us?
All right, here's a different kind of prediction, guys. What's your over-under on teams testing positive for COVID?
Oh, God.
Well, so during ACC and conference tournaments last week, we had 3 teams come up with positive? So now you got 68 teams in Indianapolis. Early returns are good. Dan Gavitt from the NCAA put out a stat this morning, I think, of over 2,000 tests so far, 0 positives. So they're off to a good start. I'm going to set the over-under at 5, and I'm actually going to take the under. I think teams are taking this seriously. I think Indianapolis has figured out a way for these teams to have a protocol to follow. I think that, look, it's go time. This is March Madness. This is what they have worked their whole year for. Nobody's going to, not that this doesn't mean you can't get COVID. You can follow all the protocols and stuff happens. But I think there's enough in play that it's going to be less than you think. So I'm actually going to take the under on that.
I'm going to jump in here. I think it's going to be under, way under. And I want to throw it to Donna as I do this because Donna has the experience of last summer covering the basketball tournament. And all the COVID cases happened right at the very beginning as teams arrived and tested. I think if we get to Thursday, I think after that, these teams are going to be fine. And I want to see if Donna agrees.
Yeah, I think you're right. The 7 days of testing, I think it was a good idea for the NTA. I think there are going to be a couple teams that get dinged by it just because, 68 teams, we're talking, say, 20 people per team. We're talking about managers. You're talking about, there's a whole bunch of people in that tier 1 group. And all you need to do is just, go to a party and, one guy gets it and then that's it for your entire team. I don't know how many teams. Well, actually, I think every team is going to wear those Connexon microchips. So I think that will help. They're being really cautious about one person per room. They're being really cautious about nobody's eating together, nobody's gathering together. But I think getting past Tuesday, I mean, the field has been set. So now they have until Tuesday. And I think the next couple of days could be a little dicey. I think once we get later into the week, I think it's going to be less likely that we'll get a positive case like on Thursday or Friday.
Okay, Hank, back to you. I know you got a couple more questions for us.
Do lots of good questions in here, guys. So if you're anything like me and there's a couple of teams you don't know a whole lot about, I'll often pick the team based on the conference. So in your opinion, guys, which conference will do the best in the tournament?
Well, it's hard not to pick the Big Ten, right? Given the strength of that league, the number of teams that have high seeds. Mike, I know you're not high on Iowa. There's going to be one or two that maybe drop early. They're a good candidate for that, but they were unquestionably the best conference in college basketball this year. The ACC got 7 teams in, and boy, we mentioned the seeding disrespect that they had coming in here, so maybe they kind of feel like they were snubbed a little bit. Josh Pastner, the Georgia Tech coach, thinks the whole league should be in at this point, right? But I'm going to go Big Ten. I'm going to take the chalk answer there.
Josh is like the happiest guy. It would be so great to cover him. He's just like upbeat and happy all the time. I think I'm going to pick the Big 12. I think the Big 12 has a lot of really intriguing, interesting teams out there, and that also has been a rugged year. It's been a rugged conference all season. Those games are not easy to win, and so I'm going to flip your Big 10 and go Big 12.
Yeah, I agree with Don. I like the Big 12. I think partly because I've watched a lot of Big 12 ball this season. I've liked the teams and I like some of the players, so I've gravitated to watching their games. And then if Fran Fraschilla is doing the game, then I'm in because I love Fran Fraschilla. I think you learn something every time you watch him do a game. But you start with Baylor, you go to the Texas team that Donna loves, you go to the Oklahoma State team that both Donna and I love. West Virginia is being overlooked by a lot of folks. The Texas Tech team with Mac McClung is kind of scary. I don't want to go very far with them, but I wouldn't want to play them either. There's a lot of good teams in that league, and they've been slightly overshadowed because of all the attention the Big Ten got.
Yeah, we haven't talked at all about West Virginia, and I love Deuce McBride. Their guard, they're tough. They got a good big guy. I think West Virginia can make some noise in that bracket too.
And speaking of the Big 12, Gonzaga's toughest test on the way to the Final Four might be in the second round against Oklahoma.
Right.
If Oklahoma can win their first round game, which is a kind of a tough one. But, yeah, I think Oklahoma's could give Gonzaga really – Gonzaga's not ready. And we were talking about who have they played and, are they ready or not. Oklahoma's a team that could punch them right in the mouth.
And you brought up West Virginia, Donna. If Syracuse beats San Diego State and they hold serve and beat Morehead State, then that could be that second round matchup going back to the old Big East days there. All right, Hank, what else you got for us?
All right. How about other than Syracuse, who in the ACC will make a deep run?
I love how the other than Syracuse is the
that's
predicate on that. Who can make a deep run? You know what? I like Georgia Tech a lot. I feel like that team has been disrespected. I think they got a low seed. And I'm not entirely sure why they got a low seed in the tournament, but I think that they can beat Loyola Chicago. But then, yikes, they play Illinois in the next round. So that's a tough one because I think Illinois is really good. They got a giant guy in the middle, and but I love Georgia Tech's toughness. I don't know. I mean, that's what I got, I guess.
I only have one ACC team in the Sweet 16, and that's Florida State, and I'm not thrilled with the pick. The team I liked the most was Georgia Tech, but like Donna said, second round matchup against Illinois. I mean, Georgia Tech got just robbed with their seed.
Yeah.
I mean, 9th seed for the team that won the ACC tournament.
And it's good. It's not like they won the ACC tournament in some sort of fluky way. I mean, that's a pretty good team.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know if I'm picking any ACC team to really go far. Like I said, I do have Florida State in the Sweet 16. That's it.
Well, and in a normal circumstance, you'd love Virginia because they've got great outside shooting with Sam Hauser. They've got a great big man in Jay Huff. Tony Bennett, obviously a terrific coach. You know, Virginia's run the gamut in recent years. They lost as a 1 seed. They won the national championship. But it's just so hard to determine because they're getting there so late. Who knows? Maybe that could work to their advantage. Mike brought up Ohio as a tough first-round matchup for them, regardless of when they get there. It just feels like the ACC is coming in dinged here. I totally agree with Donna and Mike about Georgia Tech. Moses Wright, I think, no pun intended, rightly took the ACC Player of the Year award. Jose Alvarado is one of my favorite players to watch in the country. He's just a water bug out there, energy, shoots threes, great defense.
And he's so tough. He's just like the toughest guy. Like, I don't want that guy guarding me.
I'm so tempted to take them, but man, Illinois, like you said, they just run into a wall in that next round. So there's a lot of intriguing possibilities there, but if you're looking for the safest team to make a deep run, it's probably Florida State at this point, and that might just be to the Sweet 16.
All right, one last question, guys. We're just about out of time, and it's the question I think everybody wants the answer to. How far does Syracuse get in the tournament?
I'll be the bad guy. Okay, I'll start first. They lose to San Diego State. I think San Diego State can shoot. I think San Diego State's experienced. I think they're out to prove something here. I think the neutral court aspect of this favors them. Like if this game was in Lucas Oil Stadium, Syracuse would have an advantage having played in a dome, but playing it at the historic Hinkle Fieldhouse, run the picket fence. I got San Diego State knocking out Syracuse in the first round. Duck.
Donna?
Well, I think Syracuse can beat San Diego State. I do. I think the zone is the X factor here with the smallish San Diego State guards. Then comes West Virginia, and I think that team is really tough, rugged. They have a good big guy. They have good guards. Like I said, I love Deuce McBride. He's got a cool name. You know, what's not to like about a guy named Deuce McBride? Come on. So I think getting out of that second game is going to be tough.
Yeah, I had a real hard time actually picking the first round game. I kept convincing myself one way or the other. I eventually went San Diego State, but I think they're only favored by a point and a half, which is indicative of where I was at on this one. So I just think they've won a lot of games. They're a veteran team. Their starting lineup is 4 seniors and a junior. So I lean San Diego State, but even if Syracuse can win that game, I think West Virginia probably ends the run in the next round.
All right. Well, that is the Syracuse run, and I think maybe we'll be hit with a wet noodle on the hand. Not learning our lesson from 2016 when Syracuse was a double-digit seed and made a Final Four run. 2018, last team in, Sweet 16 run. We'll see what happens this time around with Syracuse as an 11 seed. Well, thank you so much to everybody for coming by today. Thank you so much for being syracuse.com subscribers. We can't tell you how much we appreciate that, what it means to us, and what it allows us to do in our coverage of Syracuse University athletics and as a website in total. I want to thank a couple of people here that were behind the scenes and helped us put this together. You heard the voice of Hank Doman, who helped us with the questions. Thanks to Lindsay Marlenga for help putting all this together. Our friend Josh McDonald on the technical side as well. I think our boss, Trish Lamont, is looming in the background as well. Thanks to all of them. Thanks to all of you and anybody I forgot. A big thank you for putting this together. And, of course, Mike and Donna for being here today. Enjoy the madness, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon. Please read our coverage throughout the week and plenty to come on Syracuse and San Diego State. And you guys enjoy the NCAA tournament. Thanks for being here today.